I am Elena, 42 years old, and my husband convinced me for 5 years that his sister was dead, only for me to find her in his arms. Before I tell you about the chaotic legal battle that left him homeless and begging on my doorstep, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far our community reaches. Now, let's go back to the night my life split into before and after. It was a Tuesday. I remember that specifically because Tuesday is usually the day I do inventory at my bakery, Sweet Hopes. But I had left early that day. It was our 10th wedding anniversary. 10 years. That is a decade of building a life, of sharing a bed, of merging bank accounts and dreams. I wanted everything to be perfect. I was in the kitchen of our suburban home in Connecticut. The house was warm, smelling of rosemary and roasted garlic. I was making Mark's favorite, lamb chops with a balsamic reduction. I had a bottle of expensive Cabernet breathing on the counter, the kind we only opened for major milestones. Upstairs, I could hear the shower running. Mark had just come home from showing a property. He is, or was, a real estate agent. A successful one, or so I thought. He had come through the door looking exhausted, loosening his tie, kissing me on the forehead with that familiar, weary affection. He told me he needed to wash the day off before we celebrated. I was humming to myself, slicing a baguette. I felt lucky. You know that feeling? When you look around your life and think, okay, I did this. We are safe. We are happy. I owned my bakery, inherited from my grandmother, and business was booming. Mark was handsome, charming, and treated me like a queen. We didn't have children, but we had each other. Then, his phone rang. It was sitting on the marble island, right next to the bowl of lemons. It wasn't his usual ringtone. It was a generic, default chime. That should have been my first clue, but honestly, I didn't think much of it. Mark had 2 phones, one for work, one personal. This was his personal one. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. The shower was still thrumming upstairs. I wiped my hands on my apron. I debated letting it go to voicemail. But Mark had been waiting for a call from a contractor about our roof renovation. I thought maybe they were calling from a new line. I slid the icon to answer. Hello? Mark's phone, I said, my voice cheerful. Silence. Hello? I repeated. Then, I heard it. A rustling sound, like sheets moving. And then, a whisper. It was soft, intimate, the kind of voice you use when you are lying next to someone in the dark. You left your shirt on my bed again, silly. My hand froze on the counter. The knife I had been using to cut the bread clattered onto the cutting board. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My brain was trying to process the sentence. Your shirt. On my bed. The woman on the other end didn't wait for a response. She let out a giggle. It was a light, breathy sound. A happy sound. I miss you already, she whispered. I love you, Mark. Click. The line went dead. I stood there in my beautiful kitchen, surrounded by the smell of the anniversary dinner I had spent 3 hours preparing. The silence that followed was deafening. It was heavy, pressing against my ears. I stared at the phone. The screen went black. You left your shirt on my bed. Those words echoed in my head, bouncing around, getting louder every second. It wasn't just the words. It was the familiarity. There was something about that voice. That giggle. It scratched at the back of my mind, something buried deep under years of memory. I knew that voice. I had heard that specific pitch, that specific way of ending a sentence with a little upward inflection. But that was impossible. Because the person that voice belonged to was dead. My heart started to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, erratic rhythm. My palms, which had been dry a moment ago, were suddenly slick with sweat. I felt a wave of nausea roll over me, threatening to bring up the lunch I'd had hours ago. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. No. You are imagining things, Elena, I told myself. You are stressed. It's a coincidence. But the seed was planted. A cold, ugly seed of doubt. The water upstairs stopped. I heard the bathroom door open. I heard Mark whistling. He was whistling "Fly Me to the Moon." He always whistled when he was in a good mood. I looked at the phone in my hand like it was a venomous snake. I had to put it back. I couldn't let him know I had answered. Not yet. I needed to see his face when he saw the missed call. I needed to see if he flinched. I placed the phone back exactly where it had been, next to the lemons. My hands were shaking so badly I almost knocked over the wine bottle. "Honey?" Mark's voice called out from the stairs. "Something smells amazing." He walked into the kitchen, looking fresh and clean. His hair was damp, combed back the way I liked. He was wearing a fresh white t-shirt and pajama pants. He looked at me and smiled, that dazzling, dimpled smile that had charmed me 10 years ago at a charity auction. "Happy anniversary, beautiful," he said, walking over to wrap his arms around my waist. I stiffened. I couldn't help it. His skin, usually so warm and comforting, felt like ice against me. I smelled his soap, sandalwood and citrus. But underneath that, was there something else? Was there the faint, lingering scent of a woman's perfume? Or was I projecting? "Elena?" He pulled back slightly, looking at me with concern. "You okay? You look pale." I forced a smile. It felt like my face was made of cracking plaster. "I'm fine," I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy to my own ears. "Just a little lightheaded from the heat of the oven." "Here, sit down." He pulled out a bar stool and guided me to it. He was so solicitous, so caring. "I'll pour the wine." He reached for the bottle. As he did, his eyes flicked to his phone. I watched him like a hawk. He tapped the screen to wake it up. He saw the notification. For a split second, less than a heartbeat, his mask slipped. His eyes widened. His jaw tightened. A flash of pure panic crossed his face. Then, it was gone. He swiped the notification away and shoved the phone into his pocket. "Who called?" I asked. I tried to keep my tone casual, but I could hear the tremor in it. Mark turned his back to me to pour the wine. "Oh, just a spam call. Potential fraud, you know how it is. They never stop, even on holidays." He turned back, holding 2 glasses of deep red wine. He was smiling again. But his eyes didn't match the smile anymore. They were alert. Guarded. "To us," he said, holding up his glass. I looked at the wine. It looked like blood. "To us," I whispered. I took a sip, but I couldn't taste anything. All I could hear was that voice in my head. "You left your shirt on my bed." And the giggle. That haunting, familiar giggle. It sounded exactly like Chloe. Chloe, his sister. The sister he had told me died in a horrific car accident 5 years ago. The sister whose funeral costs I had paid for because Mark was too distraught to handle the finances. The sister whose ashes sat in a decorative urn on our mantelpiece in the living room. If Chloe was dead, who was the woman whispering "I love you" to my husband? And if she wasn't dead, who was in that urn? Dinner was torture. I sat there, cutting into the lamb I had cooked with so much love, and every bite felt like sawdust in my throat. Mark, on the other hand, was chatting away. He talked about the housing market, about a difficult client who wanted a mansion for the price of a condo, about how lucky we were. "You know," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I don't say it enough, Elena. But you are the rock of this family. I don't know where I'd be without you." Normally, this would make me melt. Tonight, it made my skin crawl. The rock. That's what they call you when they need something to stand on so they don't drown in their own mess. Mark, I interrupted him. Do you miss her? He paused, his fork hovering halfway to his mouth. Miss who? Chloe. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mark put his fork down slowly. He put on his grieving brother face. It was a face I had seen 1,000 times. The furrowed brow, the downturned lips, the misty eyes. Babe, he sighed. You know I do. Every single day. Why bring this up tonight? I don't know, I lied. I just felt her presence today. Maybe because it's our anniversary. She loved anniversaries. That was a test. Chloe, the Chloe he had described to me for the first 5 years of our marriage, was cynical. She hated romance. She mocked weddings. Yeah, Mark said, nodding solemnity. She did. She would have wanted us to be happy. He failed the test. I looked at him, really looked at him. How much did I actually know about his past? Mark had been an orphan, raised in the foster system. Chloe was the only family he had. Or so he said. I had met Chloe only a handful of times before she died. She lived in California, on the other side of the country. She was wild, unpredictable, and intense. I flashed back to the day he told me she was gone. 5 years ago. It was raining. Mark had collapsed on the floor of our hallway, sobbing, clutching his phone. She's gone, Elena. She's gone. A drunk driver. She didn't make it to the hospital. I had held him for hours. I had cried with him. I had written the check for $15,000 to cover the transport of the body and the cremation because he said he couldn't bear to see her like that, broken and bloody. He handled everything over the phone with a funeral home in Los Angeles. He came back with an urn. And now, a voice on the phone sounded exactly like the woman in the urn. Mark, I said, pushing my plate away. I have a headache. I think I need to lie down. Oh. He looked relieved. Actually relieved that dinner was over. Of course, honey. You rest. I'll clean up. You're amazing, I said, the lie tasting bitter. I went upstairs, but I didn't go to our bedroom. I went to the guest room window that overlooked the driveway. I turned off the lights and watched. 20 minutes later, Mark came out onto the back patio. He thought he was alone. The kitchen lights were off. I saw the glow of his cigarette. He had quit smoking 3 years ago. Or so he told me. He pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. He didn't put it to his ear, he put it on speaker, keeping the volume low, pacing back and forth. I cracked the window open, just an inch. The night air was still. Sound carried. Careful, Mark hissed. She answered the phone, Chloe. I told you never to call during dinner. My heart stopped beating. Chloe. He said the name. He said Chloe. A woman's voice crackled back, tinny through the speaker but audible. I wanted to hear your voice. You were supposed to be here an hour ago. It's our anniversary, you psycho, Mark snapped. I have to play the part. If she suspects anything, the money stops. Do you understand? The money stops. Fine, the voice pouted. Just bring the shirt. I like sleeping in it. It smells like your cologne. I'll come by tomorrow morning. I'll tell her I have a closing in Greenwich. Just stay inside. Don't go out. I love you, brother, she giggled. But the way she said brother made my stomach turn. It was mocking. Sarcastic. Yeah. Love you too. Bye. He hung up and took a long drag of his cigarette. I slid down the wall to the floor, covering my mouth to stifle a scream. Brother. Money. Play the part. My entire world, my entire reality, shattered into a million jagged pieces right there on the guest room floor. Chloe wasn't dead. She was alive. She was nearby. And they were playing me. The money stops. I was the money. I was the one with the inheritance. I was the one with the successful business. Mark made decent commissions, sure, but his lifestyle, the cars, the suits, the watches, was funded largely by our joint accounts, into which I poured 80% of the deposits. I crawled back to our bedroom before Mark could come inside. I jumped into bed and pulled the covers up to my chin, feigning sleep. When Mark came to bed an hour later, he smelled of mouthwash and hidden secrets. He kissed my cheek. "Good night, my love," he whispered. I waited until his breathing evened out. I waited until the clock on the nightstand read 2 a.m. Then, I moved. I slipped out of bed and grabbed his phone from the nightstand. My hands were trembling, but I was fueled by a cold, sharp rage I had never felt before. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I tapped the screen. Enter passcode. I typed in our anniversary, 1014. Incorrect passcode. I frowned. That had been his passcode for 10 years. I tried his birthday. 0520, incorrect passcode. I tried his mother's birthday, the one he told me. 1102, incorrect passcode. Try again in 1 minute. He had changed it. Recently. I looked at the phone, frustrated. But then I remembered something. Mark was lazy with technology. He didn't like remembering new numbers. When he changed the garage code last month, he changed it to the last 4 digits of his social security number. I waited for the minute to tick down. 59 seconds. 30 seconds. 10 seconds. I typed in the last 4 digits of his SSN, 8892. The phone unlocked. I almost dropped it. I was in. I went straight to the call log. There it was. Outbound call. 9:15 p.m. Willow. He had saved her as Willow. I opened his text messages. There was a thread with Willow. It went back months. Willow, did you get the wine? Mark, yes. She's clueless. Making a roast. Willow, ugh. I hate her cooking. When can we go to Cabo? Mark, soon. Once I get her to sign the refi on the bakery. I gasped. The refinance. Mark had been pushing me for weeks to refinance the bakery building, saying we could pull out equity to invest in a new development deal that would set us up for life. He wanted $300,000. I scrolled up. Photos. Photos of Mark. Photos of a woman. She was stunning. Dark hair, wild eyes, pouty lips. It was Chloe. Older than the photos I had seen, but definitely her. But these weren't brother-sister photos. There was one of her wearing nothing but a blue silk shirt. Mark's blue silk shirt. The caption read, "Waiting for Daddy." I threw up. I literally leaned over the toilet and retched until there was nothing left. This wasn't just fraud. This wasn't just a lie about a death. This was incest? Or were they not siblings at all? I rinsed my mouth with trembling hands. I needed proof. Digital proof wasn't enough. He could claim the phone was hacked, or the photos were fakes. I needed something tangible. I needed that shirt. The next morning, I was a ghost. I moved through the morning routine on autopilot. Coffee. Toast. Kiss on the cheek. I have a closing in Greenwich, Mark said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. Might run late. Don't wait up. Okay, I said. Good luck. I watched him drive away in his Mercedes, the one I made the lease payments on. As soon as his taillights disappeared around the corner, I ran upstairs to his closet. Mark was meticulous about his clothes. He color-coordinated everything. Suits on the left, shirts on the right, organized by fabric and shade. I went to the blue section. Mark had a specific shirt. A Hugo Boss blue silk shirt. It was his closer shirt. He wore it when he wanted to seal a big deal. It cost $400. I bought it for him last Christmas. I flipped through the hangers. Navy. Sky blue. Cerulean. Empty hanger. There was a gap. The velvet hanger was there, but the shirt was gone. You left your shirt on my bed, the voice had said. I checked the hamper. Empty. I checked his gym bag. Empty. I started going through the pockets of the pants he had worn yesterday. Nothing. I checked the jacket of the suit he had worn the day before. My fingers brushed against a piece of crinkled paper in the inside breast pocket. I pulled it out. It was a receipt. But not a standard thermal receipt. It was a handwritten carbon copy slip, pink. Willow Creek Cleaners and Services. Item, 1 silk shirt, blue. Stain removal, lipstick. Rush order. There was an address at the bottom. 42, Oakhaven Lane, Willow Creek. Willow Creek. That was the name he saved her under in his phone. Willow. I grabbed my phone and typed in the address. Google Maps loaded. It wasn't a dry cleaner's. It was a residential address. A gated community about 40 minutes north, in a very secluded, wealthy area. I stared at the services line on the receipt. Stain removal, lipstick. He wasn't taking it to get cleaned. He was leaving it there. The receipt was a joke. A little game they played. Or maybe she wrote it out for him to find, like a sick little love note. I grabbed my car keys. I didn't care about the bakery today. My staff could handle the morning rush. I had a husband to hunt. The drive was a blur of autumn leaves and white-knuckle rage. I drove fast, weaving through traffic on the I-95. As I got closer to the destination, the houses got bigger. The fences got higher. This was old money territory. The kind of place where people valued privacy above all else. The GPS led me off the main road, down a winding lane lined with massive oak trees. 42, Oakhaven Lane. It was a sprawling estate. A modern, glass-and-stone villa set back from the road, hidden behind a tall iron gate and thick hedges. I pulled my car onto a dirt service road about 50 yards down, hidden behind a cluster of pines. I turned off the engine. I waited. My mind was racing. How could Mark afford this? Even with my money, we couldn't afford a place like this. The rent alone would be $10,000 a month. Was this why he needed the refinance? Was he already paying for this? I checked my bank app. I looked at the miscellaneous withdrawals I had ignored for years. Mark handled the bills. He said it was his contribution to the household labor. LLC holdings, $4,500. Every month. Consulting fee, $3,000. Every month. Medical expenses, various. I added it up in my head. He was siphoning nearly $10,000 a month out of our accounts under vague names. I felt like an idiot. A blind, trusting idiot. Suddenly, the gate buzzed. It opened slowly. A silver Mercedes pulled in. Mark's car. I ducked low in my seat, peering over the dashboard. He drove up the long driveway and parked right in front of the glass front door. Before he could even get out, the front door flew open. A woman ran out. She was wearing it. She was wearing the blue silk shirt. And nothing else. Her long, dark legs were bare. Her hair was wild and loose. It was Chloe. But she didn't look like a sister greeting a brother. She jumped into his arms, wrapping her legs around his waist. Mark dropped his briefcase on the driveway and caught her. And then, he kissed her. It wasn't a peck on the cheek. It was a deep, hungry, passionate kiss. His hands grabbed her backside, pulling her closer. I watched, frozen in horror, as my husband, the man who had kissed me goodbye on the cheek 2 hours ago, devoured this woman. The woman he said was his sister. The woman he said was dead. The woman whose funeral I paid for. They were laughing now. He whispered something in her ear, and she threw her head back, that distinct giggle carrying on the wind. He carried her inside the house, kicking the door shut behind them with his heel. I sat in my car, shaking. Not just shaking, vibrating. I could have driven away. I could have gone to a lawyer right then. That would have been the smart thing to do. But I wasn't feeling smart. I was feeling primal. I opened my car door. I didn't grab my purse. I didn't grab my phone. I just walked. I walked up the driveway, my boots crunching on the gravel. I didn't ring the doorbell. The front door wasn't fully latched. He had kicked it shut, but it hadn't clicked. I pushed it open. The inside of the house was like a magazine spread. Minimalist. Cold. Expensive art on the walls. It smelled of vanilla and Mark's cologne, the scent that used to make me feel safe, now making me gag. I heard them before I saw them. They were in the living room, just off the foyer. It was a sunken living room with plush white carpets. Did you bring the wine? Chloe's voice. I told you, I forgot. I had to get out of there fast. She was asking questions about you last night, Mark said. She suspects? I don't know. She's getting needy. Asking if I miss you. Ah, poor Elena, Chloe mocked. Does she miss her dead sister-in-law? They both laughed. A cruel, ugly sound. I stepped into the archway of the living room. Yes, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She does. The silence that followed was instant and absolute. Mark spun around. He was holding a glass of scotch. He dropped it. The glass shattered on the white marble floor, amber liquid splashing everywhere. Chloe was lounging on the sofa, still wearing only the blue shirt. She didn't scream. She just froze, her eyes going wide. Elena, Mark stammered. His face drained of all color. He looked like a ghost. Elena, what are you doing here? I came to pick up your shirt, I said, pointing at Chloe. And to meet the ghost. Mark took a step toward me, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Baby, please. Let me explain. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like? I laughed. It was a hysterical, jagged laugh. You told me she was dead, Mark. You made me pay for her funeral. And here she is, wearing your clothes, kissing you in the driveway. I turned to Chloe. And you? You're his sister? Is this how siblings behave in your family? Chloe smirked. Actually smirked. She pulled the shirt tighter around her, not out of modesty, but out of defiance. She sat up straighter, crossing her legs. We aren't actually related by blood, Elena, she drawled. Foster siblings. Different parents. So technically, it's not illegal. Shut up, Chloe. Mark roared. He turned back to me, desperation pouring off him. Elena, listen to me. Please. You have to understand. I understand that you are a liar, I spat. I understand that you have been stealing my money to fund this love nest. I understand that I am done. I turned to leave. I had seen enough. I needed to get out before I did something violent. No. Mark lunged forward and grabbed my arm. Don't touch me. I screamed, yanking my arm back. Elena, wait. Look at her. Mark pointed at Chloe. Look at her closely. I looked. Chloe was staring at the ceiling now, humming a nursery rhyme. Her expression had shifted. The smirk was gone, replaced by a vacant, glassy stare. She started rocking back and forth. What is this? I asked, disgusted. Bad acting? She's sick, Elena, Mark whispered, his voice trembling with tears. She's really, really sick. She seemed fine 5 minutes ago when she was sticking her tongue down your throat, I countered. That's the illness, Mark pleaded. She has dissociative identity disorder and severe schizophrenia. She had a breakdown 5 years ago. The accident? It happened. But she didn't die. She survived with severe brain damage. You told me she was dead. Because I was ashamed. Mark fell to his knees. He actually dropped to his knees in the broken glass and spilled scotch. My parents, my foster parents, they abandoned her. They wanted to put her in a state institution. A hellhole, Elena. I couldn't let them do that. I looked down at him. He was crying. Real tears. Snot running down his nose. So I took her in, he sobbed. But she gets confused. She thinks I'm her husband. She thinks we are married. If I contradict her, she gets violent. She hurts herself. She tried to slit her wrists last year because I told her I had a wife. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. I had to hide her. I had to play along. When she has episodes, I have to pretend. That kiss outside? That was me de-escalating a crisis. If I hadn't kissed her, she would have run into traffic. I looked at Chloe. She was now picking at a loose thread on the sofa, muttering, blue shirt, pretty shirt, Mark's shirt. She looked lost. Broken. And the money? I asked, my resolve wavering just a fraction. The thousands of dollars? Private care, Mark said. Willow Creek is a private assisted living facility. This isn't a rental home. It's a care unit. It costs a fortune. I didn't want to burden you with it. I didn't want you to think I came with baggage. You lied about her death, I repeated, but the fire was leaving my voice. I was confused now. I wanted to protect you, Mark said, grabbing my hand. I wanted our life to be happy. I didn't want to drag you into this nightmare. I handle it. I come here, I make sure she takes her meds, I play the role she needs me to play so she stays calm, and then I come home to you. You are my real life, Elena. You are my sanity. He kissed my knuckles. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I was just so scared you would leave me if you knew I came with a crazy sister who thinks she's my wife. I looked from Mark, weeping on the floor, to Chloe, rocking on the sofa. It was a horrific story. But it was plausible. Mental illness is messy. Shame is powerful. Is she sedated? I asked quietly. She needs her meds, Mark said, standing up and wiping his face. I need to give her the shot. Please, Elena. Wait in the car. I'll settle her down, and then I'll tell you everything. Everything. No more secrets. I hesitated. Every instinct in my body said run. But my heart, my stupid, loving heart, saw my husband in pain, trying to care for a sick family member. 10 minutes, I said. If you aren't out in 10 minutes, I'm calling the police. Thank you, Mark breathed. Thank you, baby. I walked back to my car. My head was spinning. Was he telling the truth? Was I the monster for thinking the worst? I sat in the car, watching the front door. Inside the house, unbeknownst to me, the weeping Mark stood up, brushed the glass off his knees, and turned to the rocking Chloe. Cut the act, he said dryly. She bought it. Chloe stopped rocking instantly. She smiled, a cold, predatory smile. I told you I'm a good actress. You owe me a Chanel bag for this. Mark came out exactly 9 minutes later. He looked exhausted. He had changed his shirt, he was wearing a plain gray t-shirt now. He got into the passenger seat of my car. He didn't try to touch me. He just sat there, staring out the window. Is she asleep? I asked. Yeah. The sedative works fast, he said hoarsely. We sat in silence for a long time. The engine ticked as it cooled. Why, Mark? I asked finally. Why the funeral? The urn? The urn is empty, he admitted. It was symbolic. To me, the sister I knew died in that crash. The person in that house, that's not Chloe. That's a shell. He turned to me. I know how this looks, Elena. I know. But think about it. If I was having an affair, why would I do it with a woman who looks like a wreck? Why would I bring her here? I'm protecting her. She has no one else. You let her kiss you, I whispered. The image was burned into my retinas. I told you, Mark said, his voice firm. It's therapy. It's roleplay therapy. Her doctors advised it. Don't break the delusion violently. I have to ease her out of it. If I push her away, she screams. She attacks the nurses. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a brochure. Willow Creek Advanced Memory and Psychiatric Care. He handed it to me. It looked legitimate. Glossy photos of smiling nurses and calm patients. I pay $8,000 a month for this place, he said. That's where the money goes. I'm not buying Ferraris, Elena. I'm keeping my sister off the streets. I looked at the brochure. I looked at my husband. He looked so beaten down. So noble, in a twisted way. Carrying this secret burden for 5 years to spare me. You should have told me, I said, tears finally spilling over. We are partners. We share everything. I was a coward, Mark said softly. I was afraid you wouldn't want a husband who comes with a lifetime of psychiatric bills and drama. I wanted to be perfect for you. He reached out and touched my cheek. I love you, Elena. You are the only woman I have ever loved. Chloe. Chloe is my cross to bear. I leaned into his hand. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. The alternative, that he was a monster sleeping with his sister, was too much for my brain to handle. We need to change this, I said, wiping my eyes. No more secrets. If she's alive, she's my family too. I want to help. Mark flinched. Just slightly. Elena, she's dangerous. She hates you. In her mind, you are the mistress stealing her husband. I can handle it, I said, my resolve hardening. I run a business. I manage 20 employees. I can handle a sick woman. We are going to do this together now. No more hiding. Mark swallowed hard. He looked trapped. But he nodded. Okay. Okay. We do it together. I drove us home. I felt a strange mix of relief and lingering dread. Relief that my husband wasn't a cheater, in the traditional sense, but dread at the reality of our new life. That night, Mark was attentive. He cooked dinner. He rubbed my feet. He talked about how relieved he was that the secret was out. But late that night, while he slept, I went downstairs to the kitchen. I retrieved the brochure he had given me. Willow Creek. I googled the phone number on the back. It rang. A recording played. Thank you for calling Willow Creek Luxury Rentals. Your home away from home. Luxury rentals. Not a hospital. Not a care facility. A rental agency for high-end vacation homes. My blood ran cold again. He had lied. Again. But then I thought, maybe he rents a private home and hires private nurses? That would explain the high cost. Maybe the brochure was just something he grabbed from the management office? I was making excuses for him. I knew I was. But I needed to be sure. I needed to see the doctors. I needed to see the medical records. The next morning, I told Mark. I want to meet her doctor. I want to see her treatment plan. Mark didn't blink. Of course. Dr. Evans. He comes on Thursdays. I'll set up a meeting. He was too calm. 2 days later, on Thursday, we went back to the villa. A man in a white coat was there. He looked distinguished. He had a stethoscope around his neck. Mrs. Mitchell, he said, shaking my hand warmly. I'm Dr. Evans. Mark has told me so much about you. It's brave of you to come. He pulled out charts. He showed me brain scans. He used big words like schizoaffective disorder and frontal lobe trauma. Chloe is very fragile, Dr. Evans said gravely. Mark is her anchor. Without him, she would require institutionalization. I looked at the charts. They had Chloe's name on them. They looked real. Okay, I said, feeling guilty for my late-night Google search. Okay. I believe you. I agreed to continue the payments. In fact, I offered to pay directly from my business account to simplify things for Mark. No, Mark said quickly. No, keep it through me. It's easier that way. I have a system. I let it go. But as we were leaving, I asked to use the bathroom. I walked down the hall. I passed Chloe's bedroom. The door was ajar. She was asleep. Or pretending to be. I stepped inside quietly. I looked around. It was messy. Clothes everywhere. On the vanity table, amidst bottles of pills, was a tube of lipstick. Ruby Woo by MAC. I picked it up. Underneath the lipstick tube was a piece of paper. It was a receipt from a bar called the Red Velvet. Dated 2 nights ago. Timestamp, 11:30 p.m. 2 nights ago. The night Mark said he was staying over at the villa because Chloe was having a bad episode and needed constant supervision. If she was having a bad episode, how was she at a bar at midnight? And next to the receipt was a matchbook. On the matchbook, a phone number was scrawled in handwriting that I recognized instantly. It was Mark's handwriting. But the name next to it wasn't Dr. Evans. It was Lincoln, P.I. Why would a sick woman have a private investigator's number written by my husband? Or, did Mark write it for himself? I pocketed the matchbook and the receipt. I walked out of the room. Mark was waiting by the door, looking anxious. Ready? He asked. Ready, I smiled. The gaslighting was good. It was almost perfect. But Mark forgot one thing: I run a bakery. I know the difference between sugar and salt, no matter how much they look alike. And something here was very, very salty. For the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the supportive wife perfectly. I asked about Chloe every day. I transferred the money, $8,000, into Mark's account on the first of the month without complaint. I even offered to bake cookies for Chloe. She loves oatmeal raisin, Mark said. But be careful, she might throw them at you. I baked them. He took them. But while I was baking, I was plotting. The matchbook I found, Lincoln, P.I., was burning a hole in my pocket. I waited for a day when Mark was showing houses, which I now assumed meant sleeping with Chloe. I called the number. Lincoln Investigations, a gruff voice answered. Hi, I said. I found your number in my husband's possession. Mark Mitchell. Silence on the other end. Then a heavy sigh. Mark Mitchell. I haven't heard that name in 10 years. 10 years? I asked. You know him? Lady, the voice said. I didn't just know him. I investigated him. For his first wife. First wife? The ground seemed to drop out from under me. Mark had told me I was his first marriage. He said he had been too focused on his career to marry before me. I need to see you, I said. Today. I'm expensive, Lincoln grunted. I have money, I said. And I have cookies. I met Lincoln at a diner on the edge of town. He was a bear of a man, 50-something, with a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite and dragged over gravel. He didn't touch the cookies. He just looked at me with pity. "Mark Mitchell isn't his real name," Lincoln said, dropping a file on the table. "It's Marcus Miller. He's a grifter. A con artist." I opened the file. There was a mugshot. Younger, without the expensive haircut, but definitely Mark. "He targets women with inheritances or small businesses," Lincoln explained, sipping black coffee. "He marries them, drains their accounts, and then vanishes. Or gets them to sign over assets and then divorces them." "And Chloe?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Is she his sister?" Lincoln laughed. A dry, barking sound. "Sister? No. That's Chloe DeVille. She's his partner. They've been running this scam for 15 years. They grew up in the same foster home, yeah, but they aren't related. They're lovers. Bonnie and Clyde without the guns, just manipulation." He flipped a page. "Here's the play: he marries the Mark. Chloe shows up as the crazy sister or the needy ex or the stalker. They create a crisis that requires money. They bleed you dry. Then, when the money runs out, or when you catch on, they disappear." "But the doctor," I stammered. "Dr. Evans. I met him. He had charts." "Actor," Lincoln said. "Probably a guy they hired from a local theater group. Or another con man." I sat back in the booth. I felt numb. Completely numb. The tears didn't come this time. I was past tears. I was in a state of cold, clinical shock. "He wants me to refinance my bakery," I whispered. "He wants $300,000 for a development deal." "There is no deal," Lincoln said. "Once you sign that paper, the money goes to an offshore account, and Marcus and Chloe go to Cabo. That's their retirement plan." Cabo. I remembered the text message. "When can we go to Cabo?" It all fit. Every lie. Every closing. Every dollar. "So," Lincoln said, leaning forward. "What do you want to do?" "I can take this to the police. We have enough for fraud. Maybe bigamy if he never divorced the first wife." I looked at the file. I looked at the picture of Marcus, smiling that charming smile. I thought about the 10 years I gave him. The love. The dinners. The trust. I thought about Chloe, wearing my husband's shirt, laughing at me. Con wife. Stupid wife. Going to the police was the logical step. He would go to jail. But jail seemed too easy. If I went to the police now, I'd get my justice, sure. But I'd be the poor victim. The woman who got scammed. Everyone in town would pity me. Poor Elena, her husband played her for a fool. I didn't want pity. I wanted vengeance. I wanted to hurt him. I wanted to hurt them both. I wanted to take the one thing they loved more than each other. The money. "No police," I said, closing the file. "Not yet." Lincoln raised an eyebrow. "You want to play dangerous, lady? These two are pros." "I'm not a pro," I said. "But I'm a business owner. I know how to manage assets. And right now, I'm going to manage them right into the ground." I pulled out my checkbook. I wrote Lincoln a check for $5,000. "I'm hiring you," I said. "I need cameras in that villa. I need audio. I need access to their fake accounts. Can you do that?" Lincoln looked at the check. He grinned, showing a gold tooth. "For this much? I can wire the place like the Pentagon." "Good." I stood up. "They think I'm the Mark. They think I'm the stupid, loving wife who will do anything to save her family." I put on my sunglasses. "I'm going to let them believe that." I'm going to let them think they've won. And then, I'm going to throw them a party. A party? Lincoln asked. A refinancing party, I said. Mark wants that $300,000? I'm going to give it to him. Or at least, he'll think I am. I walked out of the diner. The sun was shining. It felt different now. It didn't feel like the sun on a victim's face. It felt like a spotlight on a stage. I drove home. Mark was there, sitting on the couch, looking stressed. "Hey babe," he said. "How was work?" "Great," I lied. "I was thinking, Mark. About the refinance." His ears perked up. He tried to hide it, but I saw the twitch. "Yeah? I think you're right. We should do it. In fact, why stop at $300,000? The building is worth $2 million. Let's pull out $1 million. Let's really invest in our future." Mark's eyes went wide. Greed. Pure, unadulterated greed flashed across his face. Are you sure?" he asked, trying to sound cautious. "Absolutely," I said, walking over and kissing him on the forehead. "I want to secure our family. For us. And for Chloe." "That's amazing, Elena," he breathed, pulling me into a hug. "You won't regret this." Over his shoulder, I stared at the urn on the mantelpiece. The empty urn. "No, Mark," I thought. "I won't. But you certainly will." The game was on. And unlike them, I wasn't acting. I was executing. The hardest part of acting isn't the crying, it's the smiling. For the next 10 days, I deserved an Academy Award. I woke up every morning next to the man who was plotting to destroy me. I made him coffee. I straightened his tie. I kissed him goodbye. And every time his lips touched my cheek, I had to physically restrain myself from scrubbing my skin with steel wool until it bled. Lincoln, my private investigator, had been clear: do not break character, Elena. If Mark smells even a whiff of suspicion, he will liquidate whatever cash he can access and vanish with Chloe. You need to keep him comfortable. You need to make him greedy. So, I fed the greed. I spoke to the bank manager. I told Mark over dinner on a Tuesday night. I was pushing a piece of salmon around my plate, watching his eyes light up. The appraisal on the bakery came back higher than we thought. The building is prime real estate. We can pull out $1.2 million, Mark. Not just $300,000. Mark choked on his wine. He actually choked. He set the glass down, his hand trembling slightly. $1.2 million? Elena, baby, are you sure? That's a lot of debt to take on. It's not debt if it's leverage, I said, repeating the buzzwords he used to use on me. You said this development deal in Cabo is a sure thing, right? Triple returns? Guaranteed, Mark said. It's a luxury resort. Pre-sales are through the roof. Then let's do it, I smiled, reaching across the table to take his hand. His palm was sweaty. I want to retire early, Mark. I want us to travel. Maybe we can even find a specialist for Chloe in Europe. At the mention of her name, his thumb twitched against my skin. That's the dream, Elena. That's the dream. While Mark was dreaming of spending my $1 million on beaches with his lover, I was busy securing the nightmare. While he was at work, or rather, at the villa with Chloe, I was meeting with a new lawyer. Not our family lawyer, who Mark played golf with, but a shark named Rebecca Steele. Lincoln had recommended her. She was the kind of woman who wore blood-red lipstick and looked at men like they were prey. Here is the situation, Rebecca said, looking over the file Lincoln had compiled. The state of Connecticut is an equitable distribution state. But fraud changes the game. If we can prove he entered the marriage under false pretenses, using a fake identity, we can push for an annulment rather than a divorce. But more importantly, we can sue him for damages. I don't just want to sue him, I told her, my voice cold. I want to trap him. He thinks I'm signing the refinancing papers next Saturday. I'm throwing a party. A new beginnings party. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. And I need you to draft a document. It needs to look exactly like the loan agreement from the bank. Same header, same font, same legal jargon. But the fine print needs to be different. Rebecca leaned forward, intrigued. Different how? Instead of a loan agreement secured by the bakery, I said, I want it to be a confession of judgment and a transfer of assets. I want a document that states that any funds transferred to him are a loan he is personally liable for, secured by his future earnings and, wait, does he technically own the Mercedes? Leased in your name, Rebecca noted. Right. He owns nothing, I realized. The anger flared up again. He owns nothing but his lies. We will structure it differently, Rebecca said, clicking her pen. We will let him think the money is coming. We let him think he won. But before that, we freeze him out. You said you want to catch them on tape? Lincoln is installing the cameras tomorrow, I said. Mark thinks I'm going to a baking convention in Boston for 2 days. He's going to spend the weekend at the villa with Chloe to calm her down. The next day, I drove to Boston. Or rather, I drove toward Boston, looped around, and checked into a motel 6 towns over. Lincoln's team moved into the villa like ghosts. They waited until Mark and Chloe went out for a therapy drive, which was actually a shopping spree at the outlet mall, judging by the GPS tracker on Mark's car. They planted tiny cameras in the living room, the kitchen, and yes, the bedroom. You don't have to watch the bedroom feed, Elena, Lincoln texted me. Yes, I typed back. I do. I needed to see it. I needed the hate to burn away the last remnants of love I had for him. I needed to cauterize the wound so I wouldn't bleed out when I destroyed him. I sat in that motel room, staring at my laptop screen, eating stale vending machine crackers. The feed went live at 4 p.m. At 4:15 p.m., Mark and Chloe walked in. They were laughing. Mark was carrying shopping bags. Gucci. Prada, Sephora. She is so stupid, Chloe's voice came through the speakers, crystal clear. She kicked off her heels and threw herself onto the white sofa. 1.2 million, Mark. Do you know what we can do with that? We have to be careful, Mark said, pouring 2 glasses of champagne. The same champagne we drank at our wedding. The bank transfer takes 3 days. We need to keep her happy until the funds clear. I'm tired of her, Chloe whined. I'm tired of playing the retard. She used the slur casually, laughing. Do you know how hard it is to rock back and forth and drool when I just want to slap her face? It's almost over, babe, Mark said, sitting next to her and kissing her neck. Saturday. She signs the papers at the party. Monday, the wire hits. Tuesday, we are on a plane. We leave the Chloe identity here. You can be, I don't know, Veronica. Or Scarlett. I like Scarlett, she giggled. And what about Elena? What happens when she realizes the money is gone? Mark paused. He looked at the camera, unknowingly staring right into my eyes. Who cares, he said cold-bloodedly. She has the bakery. She can bake muffins for the rest of her sad, lonely life to pay off the debt. She's a survivor. She'll be fine. I closed my laptop. I walked into the motel bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked older. But he was wrong. I wasn't a survivor. I was a predator. And he had just stepped into my territory. Returning home from the convention was surreal. Mark greeted me with flowers, lilies, my favorite. Or they used to be. Now they just smelled like funerals. How was Boston? He asked, kissing me. Inspiring, I said. I learned a lot about cutting losses. That sounds business-wise, he laughed. Did you miss me? More than you know, I said. The days leading up to the party were a blur of logistics. I wasn't just planning a party, I was planning an execution. I hired a catering company, but I also hired off-duty police officers as security. I told Mark it was because of the amount of jewelry some guests might wear. He bought it. His ego was so inflated by the promise of the $1 million that he had lost his survival instincts. But the hardest part was watching the tapes. Every night, after Mark fell asleep, I would go to the guest room and review the footage from the villa. It became a ritual of pain. I saw them spending my money. I saw Chloe wearing my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one I thought I had lost 2 months ago. Mark must have stolen it for her. Look at these pearls, Chloe said on the tape, admiring herself in the mirror. They look so much better on me. Elena has such a thick neck. She looks like a cow wearing a collar. Mark laughed. She does have a sturdy build. Peasant stock. I paused the video. Peasant stock. My grandmother started that bakery with nothing but a sack of flour and a dream when she immigrated here. She worked 18 hours a day until her hands were arthritic and twisted. That peasant stock built the life Mark was currently leeching off of. I rewound that clip. I saved it. File name, Exhibit C. But the most damning conversation happened 2 nights before the party. They were in the kitchen of the villa, eating takeout sushi. What if she reads the papers? Chloe asked, dipping a roll in soy sauce. She's not illiterate, Mark. She trusts me, Mark scoffed. And besides, I swapped the pages. The lawyer sent over the draft, but I edited the repayment terms. She thinks it's a standard 30-year commercial mortgage. But the version I'm giving her to sign is a hard money loan with a balloon payment due in 30 days. What does that mean? It means, Mark smirked, that when the payment comes due in a month, she won't have the cash. The lender, which is a shell company I set up, will foreclose on the bakery. We don't just get the $1.2 million cash. We get the building too. We sell it, that's another $1 million. I stared at the screen. He wasn't just going to leave me in debt. He was going to take the bakery. He was going to take my grandmother's legacy. He was going to wipe me off the map completely. This wasn't just greed. This was malice. This was evil. I called Rebecca, my lawyer, at 2 a.m. He tampered with the documents, I told her, my voice shaking with rage. He's planning to foreclose on the bakery through a shell company. Good, Rebecca said, her voice groggy but sharp. That's intent to defraud. That's a felony. We have him on tape admitting it? Crystal clear. Elena, Rebecca said. Change of plans. Don't just show the video of them sleeping together. That's painful, but it's just a divorce. Show the confession. Show the fraud. We bury him. Oh, I'm going to show it all, I promised. But I need one more thing. What? I need Chloe at the party. There was a silence on the line. That's risky, Rebecca warned. Mark told me he wants to bring her, I said. He spun me a story about exposure therapy. He wants her to see a family environment to help her heal. But the real reason is that Chloe wants to see me sign my life away. She wants to watch the cow get slaughtered. And you're going to let her? I'm going to insist on it, I said. I want her in the front row. The next morning, I sprung the trap. Mark, I said over breakfast. I was thinking about Chloe. He tensed up, spoon hovering over his cereal. Yeah? Ideally, I want her at the party Saturday. I know it's a lot of people, but she's your sister. This is a celebration of our family's future. It feels wrong to leave her out. Mark looked at me, scanning my face for any sign of deception. I gave him my best, most naive smile. I think that might be good for her, he said slowly, the gears turning in his head. He was thinking exactly what I knew he would. If Chloe is there, we can celebrate together right under Elena's nose. Great, I said. I'll buy her a dress. Something blue. To match your shirt. Mark choked on his coffee again. What? Blue, I repeated innocently. It's a calming color, right? For her condition? Right, he exhaled. Right. Calming. I walked away to hide my smile. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of the wolf watching the lamb wander away from the herd. Saturday arrived. The weather was perfect. The sky was a brutal, brilliant blue. I spent the morning at the salon. I didn't get my usual sensible bob. I got extensions. I got my makeup done sharp and smoky. I put on a dress I had bought 3 years ago and never worn, a red silk gown that hugged every curve. When I walked down the stairs, Mark's jaw dropped. Wow, he said. You look different. New beginnings, I said. Where's Chloe? I'm picking her up now. Are you sure about this? Never been more sure of anything in my life. As he drove off to get his sister, I walked into the living room. The catering staff was setting up. But among the waiters were 2 men who didn't look like waiters. They looked like linebackers. Lincoln walked in from the back patio. He was wearing a tuxedo that strained at the shoulders. Cameras are set? I asked. Projector is linked, Lincoln nodded. Sound system is patched in. The moment you give the signal, the feed cuts from the happy anniversary montage to the Mark and Chloe show. And the police? Detectives Miller and Stabler are parked down the street in an unmarked van. They're waiting for the signal. Good. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt a strange sense of calm. It was the eye of the storm. Guests started arriving at 6 p.m. Friends, neighbors, employees from the bakery. My Aunt Rosa. Everyone who loved me. Everyone who thought Mark was the perfect husband. At 6:30 p.m., the Mercedes pulled up. Mark stepped out. He walked around and opened the passenger door. Chloe stepped out. She wasn't wearing the modest blue dress I had suggested. She was wearing a silver sequined mini dress that barely covered her thighs. She clung to Mark's arm, looking around with wide, feigned fear. She's nervous, Mark mouthed to me as they walked up the path. I met them at the door. Chloe, I said warmly, taking her hand. Her skin was cold. Welcome to our home. Chloe looked at me. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw the contempt in her eyes. The mockery. Thank you. Elena, she stammered, playing the part of the shy, damaged girl. Mark says you make cookies. I do, I said, squeezing her hand hard enough to grind the bone slightly. I make a lot of things. Come in. The party is just getting started. I led them into the lion's den. And the door clicked shut behind us. The atmosphere in the house was electric, but for all the wrong reasons. To the guests, it was a celebration. Champagne corks were popping. Jazz music was playing softly. People were laughing, complimenting the hors d'oeuvres, admiring the flower arrangements. To me, the air felt thick, like the pressure drop before a tornado. I watched Mark working the room. He was in his element. He had a hand on everyone's shoulder, a charm offensive in full swing. He introduced Chloe as my sister. She's had a hard time, please be gentle. And the guests were wonderful. They treated her with such kindness. Aunt Rosa hugged her. My head baker, Sarah, offered her a cupcake. I watched Chloe soak it up. She played the victim beautifully, flinching at loud noises, clinging to Mark's jacket. But every time Mark turned away, I saw her snatching champagne flutes from passing trays and downing them like water. She seems stable, Rebecca, my lawyer, whispered, appearing at my elbow. She was dressed in a sharp black suit, blending in but standing out. She's drunk, I corrected. Or high. Probably both. Are the papers ready? Rebecca asked. On the table in the study. Just like he asked. And the swap? I checked 10 minutes ago, I said. He switched the folders. The one on the desk now is the fraudulent loan with the balloon payment. Perfect, Rebecca said. He just dug his own grave. We have him on tape doing the switch. Lincoln got it. 5:45 p.m. Before he went to pick her up. Then we have everything, Rebecca said. She looked at me. Are you ready for the nuclear option? I looked across the room. Mark was laughing at a joke my uncle told. He looked so happy. He looked like a man who thought he had won the lottery. Let's burn it down, I said. I walked to the center of the room. I tapped a spoon against my champagne glass. The sharp ding-ding-ding cut through the chatter. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to me. Mark smiled, raising his glass. Chloe stood next to him, swaying slightly, a smirk playing on her lips. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice projecting clearly. Tonight is a special night. It's not just a celebration of the refinancing of the bakery. It's a celebration of truth. Mark nodded encouragingly, thinking I was talking about living authentically with his sister. For 10 years, I continued, making eye contact with Mark. I thought I knew what family meant. I thought family was about blood, or marriage, or loyalty. I paused. But recently, I learned that family is complicated. Here, here. Mark shouted. A few people chuckled. My husband, Mark, I gestured to him. He is a man of many talents. He's a salesman. A protector. A storyteller. Mark's smile faltered slightly. Something in my tone wasn't right. He told me a story 5 years ago, I said, stepping closer to him. About loss. About grief. About a sister who died too young. The room went silent. People shifted uncomfortably. They knew the tragic story. But miracles happen, I said, turning to Chloe. Because here she is. Chloe. Resurrected. Chloe looked confused. This wasn't the script. But tonight, I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming hard as steel, I want to share a different story. A story about a shirt. A blue silk shirt. Mark's face went white. The blood drained out of him so fast he looked like a wax figure. I found a video recently, I said, signaling Lincoln with a nod. And I think it captures the essence of Mark and Chloe's relationship much better than I ever could. Elena, wait, Mark started, stepping forward. Maybe we shouldn't. Roll it, I commanded. The lights in the living room dimmed. The large projection screen that had been showing a slideshow of our wedding photos suddenly flickered. Static. And then, the image cleared. It was the interior of the villa. High definition. Crystal clear audio. The scene showed Mark and Chloe. But they weren't sitting apart like siblings. They were in bed. Tangled in the sheets. Gasps erupted from the room. My Aunt Rosa screamed and covered her eyes. On the screen, Chloe, wearing the blue shirt, straddled Mark. So when the cow signs the papers on Saturday, the Chloe on the screen said, laughing, do we kick her out immediately? Or do we let her stay in the guest room while we sell the house? We kick her out, the Mark on the screen replied, stroking her hair. I'm sick of her. I'm sick of the smell of yeast and flour. I want ocean air, babe. With her money. The room was frozen in horror. Absolute, suffocating silence. Then, the video cut to the kitchen scene. I swapped the pages, on-screen Mark bragged. She'll sign the balloon loan. We take the bakery in 30 days. She'll be homeless, and we'll be rich. The video froze on Mark's face, mid-laugh. Cruel. Predatory. Evil. The lights came back up. Every single person in the room was staring at Mark. Mark stood there, shaking. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He looked at the screen, then at me, then at the guests. It's a deep fake, he screamed, his voice cracking. It's AI. Someone hacked the system. Elena, you know I wouldn't. Stop, I said. I didn't shout. I just said it with so much authority that he actually stopped. It's not AI, Mark, I said calmly. It's Lincoln. Say hello to Lincoln. I pointed to the back of the room. Lincoln waved, holding the remote control. And say hello to Rebecca, I pointed to my lawyer. And, I pointed to the front door, say hello to Detective Miller. The front door opened. 2 detectives in suits walked in, followed by 2 uniformed officers. Mark looked at the police. He looked at the open window, thinking about running. Don't, Lincoln boomed from the back. Don't even think about it. Mark slumped. The fight went out of him. But Chloe? Chloe didn't slump. She screamed. It was a feral, animalistic sound. She grabbed a champagne bottle off the nearest table and smashed it against the fireplace. You bitch, she shrieked, pointing the jagged glass at me. You stupid, barren bitch. You ruined everything. She lunged at me. The room exploded into chaos. Guests scrambled back, knocking over chairs. Aunt Rosa was praying loudly in Italian. Chloe was fast, fueled by adrenaline and whatever drug she was on. She covered the distance between us in 2 seconds. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. Because before she could get within 5 feet of me, one of the waiters, the large security guard I had hired, intercepted her. He tackled her with the efficiency of an NFL linebacker. They hit the floor hard. The broken bottle skittered across the hardwood. Get off me. Get off me. Chloe screamed, thrashing and biting. I'll kill her. I'll kill all of you. The shy, damaged, mentally ill sister was gone. In her place was a cornered rat. Mark didn't try to help her. He was backed against the wall, staring at the detectives who were putting handcuffs on him. Marcus Miller, Detective Miller said, reading him his rights. You are under arrest for fraud, grand larceny, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit theft. Elena. Mark cried out as the cuffs clicked. Elena, please. It was her. She made me do it. She's the manipulator. I was trapped. I walked over to him. I stood right in front of him, close enough to smell the sweat of his fear. She made you sleep with her? I asked quietly. She made you steal my inheritance? She made you call me a cow? I was confused, Mark stammered. I love you. I swear I love you. I laughed. It was a light, airy sound. You know, Mark. You were right about one thing. What? He asked, hope flickering in his eyes. The refinancing papers, I said. You really should have read the fine print before you swapped them. What do you mean? I knew you would swap them, I whispered. So I let you. But I also transferred the deed of the bakery into an irrevocable trust yesterday morning. The Elena Salvatore Trust. You can't foreclose on a property I don't technically own anymore. His eyes widened. And the money you thought you were stealing? I continued. The 1.2 million? I froze the application 3 days ago. There is no money, Mark. There is no loan. There is nothing. But the account. Empty, I smiled. I moved everything. The joint accounts? Drained. The savings? Gone. Even the lease on the Mercedes. I cancelled it this morning. They're towing it right now. I pointed out the window. Sure enough, a tow truck was backing up the driveway, hooking up his precious silver car. Mark looked out the window. He looked at his car being dragged away. He looked at Chloe being hauled out by 2 officers, still screaming profanities. He looked back at me. And finally, the mask broke completely. The charm, the lies, the good husband act, it all shattered. His face twisted into a snarl of pure hatred. "You worthless." He started to say. "Save it for the jury," I interrupted. "Goodbye, Marcus." I signaled the officers. They dragged him out. As he was pushed through the front door, passing the guests he had charmed only an hour ago, nobody said a word. Nobody defended him. They just watched with a mixture of shock and disgust. The door closed. The sirens wailed outside, fading into the distance. I stood in the center of my living room. There was broken glass on the floor. Spilled champagne. The ruins of a party. Rebecca walked up to me. She handed me a glass of water. "You okay?" she asked. I took a sip. My hands were finally shaking, the adrenaline crash hitting me. "No," I said honestly. "My heart is broken. My marriage was a lie. My life feels like a crater." I looked around at my friends, my family. Aunt Rosa came running over, hugging me tightly, sobbing into my shoulder. "But," I said, looking at the empty space where Mark used to stand, "I'm free. And I still have my bakery." I took a deep breath. The air tasted different. It tasted clean. "Does anyone want cake?" I asked. A nervous laughter rippled through the room. And just like that, the horror story ended. And the recovery began. The next 6 months were a blur of depositions, court dates, and therapy. The story hit the news, of course. Suburban con artist and sister lover arrested in sting operation. It was humiliating at first. People stared at me in the grocery store. They whispered, "That's the woman. The one who didn't know." But I held my head high. I refused to hide. I went to the bakery every day. I kneaded dough. I frosted cakes. I let the rhythm of the work heal me. The trial was swift. The video evidence was damning. Marcus, tried to plead insanity initially, claiming Chloe had brainwashed him. But the forensic accountant Lincoln brought and proved that Mark was the mastermind behind the financial structures. He had done this before, in Ohio and Florida. 3 other wives came forward after seeing his mugshot on the news. Chloe turned on him immediately. In exchange for a reduced sentence, she testified that Mark had recruited her from a halfway house 15 years ago and groomed her into his accomplice. Seeing them tear each other apart in court was satisfying. The love they claimed to have in those videos evaporated the second they faced real consequences. I sat in the front row every day. I wore red. On the day of the sentencing, Mark was given the opportunity to speak. He stood up. He looked thinner, grayer. The prison jumpsuit didn't fit him like his Italian suits did. He looked at the judge, then he turned and looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said. I didn't blink. I didn't cry. I just stared at him until he looked away. The judge sentenced Marcus Miller to 20 years in federal prison for multiple counts of fraud and grand larceny. Chloe got 8 years. When the gavel banged down, I felt a physical weight lift off my chest. It was over. I walked out of the courthouse. The sun was shining. Lincoln was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps. "You did good, kid," he said, lighting a cigarette. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said. "Send me the bill." "Already did," he grinned. "You paid extra." "I'm buying lunch." We went to a burger joint. I ate a cheeseburger and fries. It was the best meal I had ever tasted. It's been a year since that day. My life is different now. The big house in the suburbs? I sold it. Too many ghosts. Too many memories of a lie. I moved into a loft in the city, closer to the bakery. It's smaller, brick-walled, and full of light. It's mine. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every spoon, I bought it. No shared history. No our things. Just my things. The bakery, Sweet Hopes, is thriving. We launched a new line of revenge cookies, dark chocolate with a kick of chili pepper. They are our best seller. I'm dating again. Nothing serious. Just coffee, dinners, learning to trust my instincts again. It's hard. I still check phone screens when they light up. I still question compliments. But I'm working on it. I visited the cemetery last week. Not to visit a grave, but to bury something. I had kept the empty urn. The one Mark claimed held his sister. I took it to a dumpster behind the old house. I smashed it against the brick wall. It shattered into dust. "Goodbye, Chloe," I said. "Goodbye, Mark." I drove away and didn't look back. So, why did I tell you this story? Not to scare you. Not to make you suspicious of your partners. I told you this because I know there are women, and men, out there right now who feel something is wrong. You hear a whisper on a phone. You find a receipt that doesn't make sense. You feel a coldness in your bed that wasn't there before. And a voice in your head says, "You're crazy. You're imagining things." He loves you. I'm here to tell you, trust your gut. Your intuition is older than you are. It's a survival mechanism honed over thousands of years. If something feels wrong, it is wrong. Don't ignore the red flags just because you painted them white. Mark thought I was weak because I was kind. He thought I was stupid because I was trusting. But he forgot that kindness isn't weakness. And trust isn't stupidity. And when you betray a good woman, you don't create a victim. You create a warrior. I am Elena. I am a baker. I am a survivor. And I am happier alone than I ever was in the company of a liar. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to fight for your truth, let me know in the comments. We are stronger together. Stay safe. Stay sharp. And always check the phone bill.